CSNWashington.com.
All right, so the OTAs are done. What did we learn from the OTAs?
Well, the one thing that I always do when I go into an OTA practice is I say to myself, don't read too much into what you're seeing, because these guys are out there in helmets and shorts. The one thing I do look for is rotations and maybe who's playing in front of whom, but at the same time, it's still 70% speed, so you're not getting a really good feel. You try to watch Robert Griffin III and see if he's made any progression from last year, but then you got to remind yourself, wait a minute.
Right.
He might not have made that throw in training camp, and Deshaun Jackson might not have cut that route short in training camp. This is OTAs. So, the thing I took away was I look at rotations and who is playing in front of whom. So that's what I put down on my notepad.
Well, when you look at the offense, you have pretty much the same cast of characters,
Sure.
A couple of tweaks here. Of course, the offensive lines will look different. But when I looked at the defense during the OTAs, and I saw the big man in the middle, and I saw the big-armed Stephen Paya.
Yeah.
And then now you've got some safeties back there who are going to compete for jobs.
Sure.
Wouldn't it be just logical to assume a big-time improvement on the defense, or am I getting ahead of myself?
Well, I always try to walk cautiously with what you see in the offseason, but I really like, on paper, what we're seeing up front. Like you said, Terrence Knighton, Stephen Paya, those guys are improvements over what was here last year. The secondary, on paper, looks a heck of a lot better. Chris Culliver, I think, has the potential to be a very, very good #1 cornerback. I like the fact that Jerron Johnson it has to battle for his job with Dookie Anacho. That competition, that's important. Deshaun Goldson, he had some down years with the Buccaneers, but from everything I've heard and from what I've seen, he's looking pretty good. I would say the one question mark that I have on defense, and I do think that's going to be the best unit on this team, is at linebacker, and it's the depth at linebacker, because you look at Ryan Kerrigan, and then you look at Trent Murphy, who's gotten bigger and has another year under his belt, and Preston Smith, he's a rookie. After that, there's just not a whole lot of experience after Kerrigan.
Right.
And you look at Keenan Robinson and Perry Riley Jr., and then you got Will Compton, who I thought filled in very nicely for those guys when they were injured last year. But after that, there's not a whole lot of experience. So I'm a little concerned about the depth at linebacker. I think that might be a trouble spot.
I tend to agree with you. And when you look at that defense again, you look at some new coaches,
Yes.
and you saw some different techniques taking place. You saw on the offensive line, we saw these 9 guys lined up against 9 guys. You weren't there yesterday. You didn't see this. But, again, Bill Callahan has changed the way they coached, changed the way they practiced.
Yeah.
Same thing for Rob Akey and Joe Barry. What's your reaction to what you saw when you were there?
Well, the one thing that really jumped out at me about Bill Callahan is he keeps the guys for an extra like 10, 15 minutes after practice, especially the young guys, to make sure that they're going over their fits, and they're talking about strategy and how things are going to change. And it wasn't a whole lot of conditioning stuff. It was a lot of X's and O's, just kind of reinforcing stuff, especially with the young guys. You know what I really liked? I liked the jiu-jitsu guy and how he was.
Joe Kim.
Joe Kim. These things really matter. These small details matter. I was watching Riley and Keenan Robinson.
He's a karate guy, actually. I just want to make sure you
karate.
Okay.
He's the last guy you want to annoy around here. Was watching them work on their hand placement and how quickly they were working on that stuff. That's a big deal for linebackers, especially getting blockers' hands off of you and just watching the way they were doing it. I mean, it was really cool, and I think it could make a difference.
We have featured some of your questions, Tarek, from the press conference on Redskins Nation this week. It's been, and actually, Rich Tandler got complimented for his question. So all our guys are doing great with these question and answer sessions. But finally, play calling.
Yep.
That came up during the press conference. I mean, first-year coach. Now you've got a quarterback coach to maybe free Jay up to do a little more of the play calling. What do you think we're going to see there?
Well, the thing that I found a little confusing was it sounds like Sean McVay is going to call some plays, and just have one play caller, and I'm sure they'll get that sorted out by the time week 1 rolls around. I'm not a big fan of calling plays by committee. I feel like that's one person's job with some input from someone else. For me personally, I'd rather have Jay Gruden call the plays and have Sean, chime in when he feels like he sees something or has noticed a trend or a pattern, and hey, Jay, why don't we try this? Here's something I saw on film. But, Jay said something along, whether it's 80-20 him and Sean, I sort that out between now and week 1. I'd rather have one guy handle it.
CSNWashington.com.